On a sunny Sunday morning after the parade, Diane Riley's heels sink into damp grass. Why does she insist on wearing such shoes, given the requirements of her job to traverse lawns, meadows, and fields? Because, she answers herself with proud impatience, the kinds of houses she now sells require her to project refinement. Her city clients, like these two eager men following her across the front yard of a splendid 18th century farmhouse, expect polish. Her former attire of sneakers, boots, and fleece zip-ups just won't do. It's also why she had purchased this silk blouse on clearance at all for less, but never mind, and splurged on the blonde streaks that brighten her short, tawny hair. For local clients, the fleece and boots return because you can't appear too fussy. It's all projection, she knows. No one has ever commented on or even seemed to register her appearance. But it's about how she presents herself, about embodying confidence and believing her locally grown tastes are credible to this burgeoning category of clientele who seek not to swap their urban life, but to supplement it. The Duffles, they're called, by her friends and neighbors, by cashiers and mechanics, by her chatty hairdresser and the cheerful but caustic women at the DMV. She can't recall when or where she first heard the term, perhaps whispered at church, or dismissively dropped in a social media post, or angrily slung about in the comments section of the Griffin Gazette articles about rising rental costs and another new microbrewery. In any case, about 5 years ago, the phrase seemed to surface in half her conversations. After some confusion, she learned that the nickname's sake referred to the small satchels carried by weekenders as they disembark from trains and cars, the only bag necessary since, whether they're antiquing or apple picking, staying at a hotel or in a second home, attending outdoor performances or extravagant rustic nuptials, they won't be sticking around past Monday. When their numbers began to swell, many locals spoke of the Duffles with both mild irritation and grave concern, unsure whether these stylish aliens had landed with benign or malicious intent. Diane, who considered herself a staunch champion of her hometown, initially shared in the collective disdain and was among the more vocal of the Duffles' early detractors. But by this point, she was also selling homes. And quite unexpectedly, Duffles began calling with interest in her most expensive listings, regularly paying over asking, offering cash. Diane started to wonder what good it did to resist their arrival. If they were coming anyway, why not benefit from welcoming them? Her evolution on the matter, illustrated by new ads placed in identifiably Duffel territory on Granger Street, earned her a few awkward encounters at church and a slew of nasty remarks online. Her entrepreneurial pivot was ungenerously interpreted, even by close friends, as crass capitalizing on Griffin's newfound popularity. But they misunderstood her. She is still a staunch champion of Griffin, just now as its promoter rather than its guard. Perhaps she is ambitious, yes, but she is ambitious on behalf of her town, wanting for it the same prosperity she wants for her family. Her ambition, like Griffin's, like most ambition, was born from desperation and the feeling of being undervalued. When the Rileys were struggling, her return to work kept them afloat. She worked so Will could go to college. She worked to keep Joe stable. She worked so Chip could serve this community as essentially a glorified volunteer. She works with the Duffles to prove that success can be homegrown in Griffin. And because if she doesn't, enterprising Duffles will cater to their own. So now, out of a genuine, if convenient, shift in perspective, she has come to consider the Duffles largely harmless, like the field mice, wolf spiders, milk snakes, and brown marmorated stink bugs that infest the area. More annoyance than danger, a self-isolating species. And, as evidenced by these two eager men behind her, a lucrative wellspring of prospective buyers.
Down in the valley, moved up from the city, it's a new way of living and I'm trying to get used to it. 1 park coolers, half an ounce of an idiot, ordered a Manhattan and they call me a Cidiot. At first I hurt my feelings, but it's kinda got a ring to it. When you move to the country, they can tell when you're new to it. I'm looking at a place, but I'm trying to keep fitting in. It takes too long to be a local, so for now, I'm a Cidiot.
I'm Matt Ziffer, and this is Cidiot, learning to live and love life in the Hudson Valley. Cidiot Podcast is all about moving upstate. Episodes encouraging like how to set up your house, how to make friends, why barns are red, local history you should know, neighbors, real estate, politics. At a recent event at Spark of Hudson, I hosted a Q&A with author and journalist Brian Shaefer about his debut novel, Town and Country. His book is about all these things, but a lot more drama. Cidiot is about curiosity, and I had a lot of questions, and so did the packed, sold-out audience. Brian contributes regularly to the New York Times and has written for The New Yorker, New York Magazine, and more. He's a recipient of a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship in Arts Journalism, was a finalist for the Livingston Award for International Reporting. He earned his master's degree in creative writing from Bar-Ilan University in Tel Aviv. He and his husband live in New York City and the Hudson Valley. Town and Country is Brian's first novel. In front of an audience of Hudson Valley full-timers, weekenders, and Duffles, Brian's word for cidiots, we talk about the novel's setting as I try to guess which town in the Hudson Valley inspired it. The colorful characters who are all interacting and disrupted by a political campaign around them, yet the sense of hope throughout the book. The reviews are terrific. A big-hearted and true debut novel, says Pulitzer Prize winner Andrew Sean Greer, set in a small rural town amid a congressional race that forces the candidates, their families, and a clique of gay second homeowners to confront lies, betrayals, and shifting allegiances. The New York Times said, rich in sex and social intrigue. Town and Country is available wherever you buy books, though don't be a Cidiot, and support your local bookstore. There's also a link on Cidiot.com to the Cidiot shop on bookshop.org. Thank you, Jess at Spark of Hudson, Spotty Dog, Books and Ale, and Hudson Wine Merchants. Here's some of the conversation with author and fellow Duffle, Brian Shaefer. I guess my first question is, because I'm a writer, but not like that, is did you always want to be a writer? What's your background like before all that?
I've always been a reader. I grew up in Southern California. My parents were up in New York this week to be part of the launch. It was very special to have them here. And they kept reminding me that in fourth grade, I won a writing contest.
Oh, nice.
And for them, that just meant that naturally I would end up here and I would be writing books. And I think they are less surprised than I am that this is where I ended up and how this happened. I did not study writing in college. It was something that I came to accidentally. I fell into the fiction. I fell into journalism, but I loved it. And so I think I would say I've become a writer, but I didn't necessarily always want to be.
But a lot of your writing has been nonfiction. I assume international reporting is nonfiction, and that counts too. So what was the switch into fiction? Or is it you always done fiction on the side?
No, I've never done fiction on the side. I had never taken a fiction course until I moved to Tel Aviv. I was there for a year-long fellowship, and I was really enjoying it. I wanted to stay. And I had discovered this master's program at Bar-Ilan University, and it gave me an excuse. It gave me an excuse that I could justify to my parents as to why I was going to remain abroad. That felt a little more justifiable than working in a coffee shop. And so I began this 2-year master's program in creative writing, in fiction, and needed a job simultaneously. So got a job as a writer and editor for a newspaper, for a Haaretz newspaper.
Oh.
And so my writing training basically was a combination of these two experiences where I would go to the university during the day and I would learn how to write beautiful sentences and use active verbs and imagine characters. And then I would go to the newspaper and I would slash articles and I would cut all the fat, get straight to the point. And I think it was that combination of the journalistic editing and the creative writing that formed me as a writer.
So it's possible nonfiction can be a lot of discipline.
Yeah,
Fiction.
And it also taught me an approach to storytelling. And I think that comes into Town and Country a lot as well, which I should give you a little bit of a background. It takes place in a fictional town in an unnamed state, and it revolves around a congressional race taking place in the 6 months leading up to it. And it's about how the race upends the relationships of a local family and a group of gay second homeowners and challenges their familial, social, and political loyalties. And part of my approach to it was journalistic in terms of how I did research, and also the fact that there's 6 point of view characters that we follow throughout. And that's a little bit like writing an article where you pull in voices from all these different
You give a fair
perspectives.
voice to other.
Yeah, so that you create a robust picture of whatever subject you're covering.
Yeah, so before we get into the book really deeply, when did you move up here? Like, what was the motivation to come here?
So when I moved to New York, it was 12 years ago. I moved here from Tel Aviv, and I moved here for my now husband, Stephen. I came to give the relationship a shot, and it appears to be working. But Stephen had already been spending time up here. So he already had, I think, 5 or so years under his belt of spending time up here. So I actually was introduced to the Hudson Valley in a way that was, okay, you're moving to New York City, and now this is also going to be part of your life. And I had never heard of the Hudson Valley before.
Yeah.
Coming from Southern California, this idea that you have another place to escape to. I knew nobody who had a quote unquote second home. So this was all a very foreign concept, but I immediately fell in love with it. And one of the reasons I did so is because Stephen was smart enough to, on my very first visit, take me to the book barn, to Rogers Book Barn.
Oh, nice.
Which is 10 minutes from
icon.
us in Prairieville. And I absolutely fell in love with it. And I thought, okay, well, if this is here, then I think I'm going to...
Yeah, it's very book friendly. Every town has a very special bookstore.
Yeah.
Or should. So did you ever feel like a Cidiot?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I still do.
You still do?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, Cidiot is the blind spots that I have. And I haven't gotten rid of them. I still have my blind spots up here.
Yeah.
And so for me, the term represents all the different things that I'm not seeing and the things that are elusive in terms of my understanding.
In the book, I think you captured the tension, not just between locals and weekenders and things like that, but the feeling of being in 2 places. And the tension of, oh, I want to be here, or I want to be up here more. And that whole idea of having 2 different places, which I think my husband Brian and I had for a long time before we became full-timers. Let's talk about the book. The backdrop is this town called Griffin, which is it real? I mean, I'm guessing which town it is. Like, I was like, is it Millbrook? It's not really Pine Plains, but it could be Hillsdale. It's not Rhinebeck, and it's not Hudson. Is it real?
One of the reasons that I wanted to fictionalize it and set it in no particular place, and not even in the state isn't even defined, but I think it was to capture this sense of an archetypal small town. And I think there's a lot of different things, a lot of different components in the book that give it a sense of almost like a parable. Like there's something slightly fantastical about it. I think part of that is also this town that just has its main street, and it has its diner, and it has its church, and it all.
That's why I thought Millbrook. Then I'm thinking Millerton.
Yeah, I think it's a composite of all of them, right?
There was read the book and write in and tell us which town you think it is.
Yeah, it's all of them, and it's none of them.
And so the backdrop is a political campaign, as you expressed. We just had one here. Are you going to run for office? Like, why the political campaign as the backdrop?
The political campaign, a few different things. One is that when I started writing this, I did it as part of this thing called National Novel Writing Month, which no longer exists, but it had been around for a long time. And it basically is a 30-day sprint in the month of November to spit out 50,000 words and basically write a novel. And it's just a way for anybody with all degrees of experience, ambition, whatever, to just get a novel out there, to pull it out of yourself. So I'd always wanted to do that. After many years of doing journalism, I was itching to get back to creative writing. And so it gave me a finite time to scratch that itch. And I pulled a congressional race modeled on some that had taken place here because it gave me a very easy structure to approach. In 6 months, it gave me drama, it gave me a cast of characters, and it gave me a lot of rich themes to explore. And that was also part of the attraction, was the themes that it brought up, particularly in this case where we have a longtime local and a new resident, a carpetbagger, a young gay carpetbagger. And it brought up some really interesting questions in terms of how the people in their circles experienced the race and the campaigns, and the questions it brought up in terms of who best represents them and where they feel their loyalties, and some of the surprising interactions that happen when the race kind of upends their relationships.
Yeah. And we'll talk, without giving anything away too, there are some characters I wanted to ask you about too, because there's some of our archetypes or tropes that would be in all our communities. And one of my favorites is Diane, she's really like this glue between the two worlds. And she's got like the different loyalties. And she's very religious, but she also is making a lot of money off me. Like it's just really like an interesting tension. And it just feels really interesting and not single dimensional. I thought Diane was really cool, and I thought her faith was really interesting because it was really authentic and not cartoonish, and she gave me some giggles too.
Thank you. She is definitely one of my favorite characters for all those reasons, because she surprises herself, because she finds herself in an uncomfortable position where she has a really strong faith, and she then encounters people, including her own son, Will, who has recently come out, that challenges what she believes and makes her question the role that faith plays in her life. And at the same time, because she's become this realtor and she's found herself unexpectedly the realtor of choice for many of these gay second homeowners, but that has also given her a sense of professional pride that she hasn't done before, that she becomes the breadwinner of the family. And so her faith and her experiences start clashing with each other. And over the course of the campaign, she really starts reflecting. And I think she has a really interesting trajectory and takes some really interesting steps towards growth.
Let me ask about Will, her son, who recently came out. And I could be skewed because we're in Hudson. Are people still coming out? Like, even in Hudson, like the straight people are gay. Like, it's not like it's really. That was an interesting device.
Yes, and also he was a high school student who grew up in a rural area in a religious family. So for a certain segment of the population, no big deal. Everybody's out. And for him, this is quite a big deal, and it changes his relationship with the family. And I didn't want to tell a story about rejection, and it's not that. He's still very loved, he's still very embraced, but it's a surprise, and it's a confusing development for his entire family. And we see them grapple with that and also still maintain the relationship with him, but it's qualified. And at the same time, because he is in this town that is quickly changing and it sees an influx of these gay men, and they show him a different life that he's quite attracted to. He becomes seduced by their decadent lifestyle. Yep. And it also brings up a lot of questions for him in terms of where does he belong and who best represents him now.
And it helps that his brother's more screwed up. Another archetype is interesting, which I thought was very original, was the outsider character. This guy named Leon, who, I don't know, he just does everything wrong, and it's hysterical. And he's like a real Cidiot. He just makes mistake after mistake. I had a lot of sympathy for him, and I didn't. I really enjoyed him because he just couldn't fit in. You just want him to succeed.
Yeah, he's a character so he's recently divorced and finds himself up here, and he's trying to restart his life. And he desperately wants to infiltrate this group of gay men who offer a sense of camaraderie and give him a community, but he is absolutely his own worst enemy.
He does do something good, though. He goes to the local bar, and which is something that I've always preached. Go to the local bar, sit at the bar. That's how you meet people.
That was part of my research.
And and so that was a good breakthrough. So he actually succeeds, not with who we wanted to, but in some ways with a different world.
Yeah, he makes genuine connection, just not necessarily with the people that he wants. And so for me, he actually became one of the most allegorical characters of the book, because I think he represents the way that even welcoming social circles still can close themselves off, and there's an exclusivity. And I was interested in what happens when somebody who isn't let in, how they receive that, how they react to that. And so the dismissiveness that he feels and what he ultimately ends up doing with the hurt that he receives, for me, it really reflected, I think, something that we see in the broader culture, which is when people feel dismissed, demeaned, condescended to, the way that can then turn and manifest in really harmful ways was something that I really wanted to explore. And he gave me a vessel and vehicle to do that.
Yeah. Another subplot is drug abuse. And it's funny because I hadn't really talked about it on Cidiot at all. And then I interviewed a healthcare worker up here, and he really brought it up and just said it's really just quite an epidemic up here, especially in Columbia and in Greene County across. It's pretty devastating. So I thought it was really interesting that was in there. Wasn't expecting it. So I was curious how that came up as a topic and how did, because it had its kind of special role in the background, also connecting some other characters.
Yeah, I started writing this novel when I did that.
It's a little more serious.
When I did that National Novel Writing Month, that was in November of 2019. And I didn't have any expectation of continuing with the novel. It was really just an exercise in creative writing. And then, of course, a few months later, the pandemic hits. I'm up here, most of my journalism, because I write about performance, theater, and dance, that all went away. So I had a lot of time, and I had this rough draft. And that's when I really committed to focusing on it. And this is also a moment when the national opioid crisis is really, especially during the pandemic, really getting a lot of attention, and people are starting to understand the extent of it. And in reading about it, I came to understand that it is equally a problem up here in Columbia County. And so that also became part of my research. I attended some meetings, some support groups, and then opioid response training as well to learn how to use Narcan and to understand how people were talking about it, how the region was responding to it, what resources were available. And I think the thing that felt important about bringing that into the story was the way that one of the second homeowners also comes to understand the extent of the drug problem in this fictional region, and the way that it just changes how he thinks about his life up here. So initially it was just an escape, just a place to get out of the city where he can leave all his problems behind, and then to start to understand that the problems that exist, that his neighbors are facing, that this isn't just an escape. This is a place where people live full-time, their full lives, and face all the challenges that people face everywhere. And it changes the way that he thinks of himself as a resident, as a neighbor, in terms of his responsibility. And it colors this place that had been very simplistic up until that point. And it adds a degree of complexity. And that felt important to bring into the experience of the second homeowners here.
And what about the locals? There's a fair number of people who are either from the area, authentically, or had been up here for a long time and stuff like that too. And there's a fair number of those characters. Did you do different kinds of research for that, or do you just know a lot of people up here that are both you and also full-time up here and people who have been here a long time, or how'd you do that kind of research?
And part of it was just 12 years up here, all the people that I've encountered, and drawing not directly to any one person. I took great pains that nobody could be traced to an exact character.
Especially nobody in Millerton.
Yeah, exactly. But similarly to the towns, as you were saying, that it's a little bit of all these different places, is the same way that I built the characters, is that they represent these different types. And I did my research in terms of Jerry is a dairy farmer, and Stefan brought me to a dairy farm and showed me milking and brought me into that world and allowed me to see
I
it.
want to learn how to milk a cow.
Yeah, I do not know how to milk a cow, but I observed it.
So Duffles is another word for
Cidiot.
So just be honest. Are you starting a podcast named Duffles? Because I will die.
I went through many titles over the years, but the Duffles actually was, for a long time, going to be the name of the book. It's the name that I got literary representation with. It's the name that we sold the book under. And at the very last minute, we realized that it wasn't right because it doesn't help you understand what the book is about. It also really only talks about half of the cast of characters.
Right, it wouldn't be comprehensive.
But it was very much a significant part of it.
It's a fun word for it. I had never heard it before.
I made it up.
Did you trademark it? I trademarked mine.
Oh, I should do that. I don't know if you can trademark the Duffel, but
just 6 months.
As I was writing this, it was during the pandemic, mostly the first draft, and I was listening to Cidiot all the time, and it was giving me insight in a lot of these
I've never talked about luggage, though.
No, you haven't. And there was a moment where Cidiots I considered using that term. But it also, I wanted to find something unique to me, unique to the story, also to enhance the idea of the parable nature of it.
Do the Duffles know they're called the Duffles?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're aware. They hear the whispers.
Because Cidiot has a very negative, I'm trying to make it fun and not be a Cidiot, but it definitely, there's been some backlash against it. Like some people won't listen to the show because they recalled it once and they hate it. And
It's one of the reasons that I did choose a different name and settled on Duffles, because there was something softer. There's something a little more generous about it. It's descriptive and rather than derogatory. And that also just feeds into the philosophy of the book, where I wanted to treat all the characters, local and part-time, with more generosity. And so it felt necessary to find a name that also fit into that.
Yeah. Plus mine's trademarked. Do you have any advice, having done this book and interacted with all these characters, do you have any advice for Duffles?
I think one of the lessons of the book, and I think the characters that are successful in opening their eyes to the region are the ones who show up. There's a scene in particular. There's one character named Eric. This is the one who is spending his summer up here. He and his husband have recently bought a new home. There's a 4th of July community picnic that he wants to attend, but his husband isn't interested. His group of friends, they're throwing their pool party. They can't be bothered. And he reflects on an argument that he had with his husband about whether or not they should attend. And his husband is arguing, what's the point? It's so obnoxious to go to find parking, to wait around. There's a little parade. All you're do is stand and watch and see these troop of Girl Scouts walk by, and they're just waving, and what are you supposed to do? And Eric reflects on that. Like, why do you show up to such things? You show up to wave back. And it's the idea that your role in the community is to be there, to be present, to take a step toward your neighbors. So if there's one thing that I would suggest, it's show up to those events, be present, wave back.
Yeah, I think that's amazingly good advice too. Yeah. So I thought we would play a game. And it's not just for me to find out the real town where the book takes place, but I've done this in an episode or two, but I've never done this live. So the game is, I will throw out a town. There's a long list of them alphabetically. And you have to say, Brian, the first thing that comes to your mind. If you get stuck, I will encourage the audience to yell out their reaction as well. This is a Cidiot Geography Game.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's going to reveal how much of a duffel I really am.
Yeah, it might, or just like terrible stereotypes. Oh, also, whichever town you're from, you might end up very insulted or flattered. So depending on where.
Or if you're from the town in question, please pipe in and help me out.
Ankara.
Home.
Catskill.
Lumberyard. Which no longer exists, but that's the thing. But do you all remember the
there is.
Like lumberyard?
There's a theater
few years
there
ago?
now, too.
There was a theater, etc. So yeah.
Anyone got out for Catskill?
Over there.
It's right there. Wow, God, the Hudson bubble. The Hudson bubble. What?
Gas filters.
Yeah, the cat sculpture. Yeah. Chatham.
Brewery.
Cleverick. It's where I live.
I know. Matt Zucker.
And I also said it wrong, didn't I, Noel?
Cleverick.
Oh, God.
Cleverick. Wow.
Yeah, it's never going to happen.
Cleverick.
Brian and I are going to move before I get it right. I didn't even do, Ackerd.
Long way.
Okay. Copac.
Lake.
Great Barrington.
Mahawi.
Hillsdale.
General store. I should say books and cake. Just
Brand new.
open, like, great bookstore, go visit.
What'd you say? Hill Rock. Yeah, that's a beautiful place. Kinderhook.
Books.
Kingston.
Rough Draft. I was there yesterday.
Livingston.
In my bio, I won like a Livingston.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what I think of. International reporting. That's what I think of. Yeah.
Livingston Manor.
History.
Millbrook.
Merritt Bookstore. I was just there yesterday as well. That's a lovely bookstore.
Millerton.
Hardy and Sons.
And source of the inspiration for the book. New Paltz.
The exit. We just passed it on our way out. I don't know.
Exit 717.
Yeah.
Poughkeepsie.
Vassar, which I almost went to, but then I ended up at UC San Diego, and I didn't make my way here for another 15 years.
Phoenicia.
I got nothing. Phoenicia, anyone? Diner.
The diner.
Gotta go to the Phoenicia Diner.
Anything else besides the diner?
Hiking.
Hikers.
Yes.
Okay, that's a good one. Rhinebeck.
Yeah, Friends. I love the Friends in Rhinebeck.
Oh, usually I get bougie.
This is bougie. Opening. The Indian place. That's so good. That's like the reason to go to Rhinebeck.
Red Hook. Bard.
Yeah, it's going.
Not Brooklyn.
Or not Brooklyn. Yeah, that's why we really said we lived in Tivoli. Socrates.
I have no connection to Socrates.
Hotel? Motel?
Hotel.
Hotel.
What's it called? Diamond Mills.
The Diamond Mills Hotel? Oh, didn't know it. Taganic. Spelled funny.
Taconic.
Sorry, Taconic.
So technically I live in East Taconic. Ankrum is my mailing address, so also home. And also the volunteer fire department, because every time we like pass the curb on 27, it's like the East Taconic volunteer fire department.
Tannersville.
I do not know Tannersville.
So I did a great episode on Camp Catskill. It's a store on the edge of Catskill Park, which is like the size of Rhode Island. And that's in Tannersville. So I really encourage you. They're hysterical. And they take you hiking. You want to hiking. Valatie?
Valatie.
Why is it an E instead of an A? I'm still the Cidiot.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Valatie for me is going to sound weird. COVID, because that's actually where I got my first COVID shot, which was when they were very rare and you had to like scramble around. There was an opening at the CVS in Valatie and I drove an hour to get it. And that is now my association with Valatie.
Woodstock.
Music.
Anyone else?
Die.
Do they still do the drum circle on Sundays at 4:00? It is an awesome thing. Yeah, that's good. Any other towns you want us to attempt? Germantown.
I knew German, like Gaskins, but it's no longer there, but that was my association with it.
She moved to Catskill.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Prairieville. That's close.
Oh, Random Harvest. I love Random Harvest. We were just there. Oh, Zinnias. We had lunch at Zinnias today. We should all go to Zinnias, fish fry.
Cool. All right, that was the Cidiot Geography Game. We didn't really insult anyone as much as I hoped. Did we do Hudson?
No.
Hudson.
Spotty Dog. Spark of Hudson.
Good name recall. All right, cool. What we were going to do was invite the audience to ask questions, but what do you want to ask Brian? Yes.
So we were talking that this looks like it'd be a good book. We're two different book clubs. So one of the book clubs is a queer book club, and the other one is gay, straight, and queer. Which one would that fit in?
Both and all. It's a great question because a starting point for the book was to portray this clique of gay men coming into a trendy rural region, and it started a little satirically, and that didn't feel like the right tone. Because ultimately, I decided that I didn't want to have to ridicule any of my characters, and it didn't feel like the thing that I wanted to offer in terms of exploring like the dynamics of the region. But then there is a part of it that explores the dynamics of that community. But at the same time, I wanted to step back because that also is a reflection of my community up here as well. But I wanted to look from the outside to imagine how we might be perceived and to put us in relationship and conversation with a local family. And so the Rileys really end up taking over a large part of the novel. We spend a lot of time with them and their perspective. And so while the gay characters, certainly their community is very centered and driven by that relationship, and the legacy of AIDS figures into the story as well. But the book becomes so much more than that and becomes about the broader community and how it can welcome and host so many different types of people and groups, and the way that they all learn from each other. And if they're open to it, allow themselves to shift their perspectives. You know, my goal in writing this was to write a gay book that my mom would love, that she could bring to her book club. And so in that sense, it's appropriate for both. And I'd be happy to attend.
Yeah, help them do it.
We will.
Anybody else? Yes, Noel.
Yeah. So since you have a very interesting life, Tel Aviv, California, international reporting, you touched a little bit about how the book was hung on a political race, but why did you decide to write on this topic rather than you said you write about music and art and dance? Whenever you self-admitted that there was still somewhat of a Duffle. Why this particular topic?
How did you choose this topic rather than many of the other interesting things you've done?
Why did you do this?
I think it surprised me as well. This was not the book that I expected to write as my first one, if I ever did. But it really was because of that National Novel Writing Month, where at the very last minute, I decided to do this exercise, and the race just gave me a fully formed story to follow, gave me the structure of the characters, the themes. And then because COVID happened and I had already embarked on it and I was already thinking about the characters, it ended up being the story that I developed. So I think I am surprised that this is the story that I told. And I still aspire to write stories centered on dance, and maybe that take place in Tel Aviv, but this is the one that came out first. And
Please.
So just the little bit we learned about Diane, she's already, for me, a very intriguing person, and her voice. You gave her being very fully in just a few paragraphs. So my question is, now that you've written the book, what happens to your characters? Because they must be very alive for you when you're writing. What happens after? Do you read them?
the question is, what happens to the characters? I wrote the book in the present tense, which also surprised me. I didn't think I was going to do that, but I realized that because we were dealing with an election, I wanted to feel the urgency of moving through it at the time that it's happening and take us all the way through election day. And so there's a way in which, because it's in the present tense, the characters still feel very alive, that I never was looking back at their past. I was always with them on the journey. And so I think in a lot of ways, I feel like I still am, that I've just left them in a moment. I don't have any intention necessarily of going beyond this book or doing a sequel or anything like this, but just in terms of like emotionally what I do with them.
What do you do with them?
I think I absorb them, and I think I absorb what they've taught me. And Diane was a really interesting example because, as we talked about, she's a person of faith, and it's a huge part of her life. And it's the way that how she sees the world, it's how she relates to her family. And I developed a lot of empathy for her and a lot of understanding in terms of the role that it plays, and also the confusion that it brings into her life. And I think a lot of empathy for the way she grapples with that confusion and the effort to keep trying to improve the relationships in her life, to be the best person that she can be in line with her values. And that was a very different way of thinking about somebody in her position. And I think it has helped me look beyond and more broadly, and to consider other people that I encounter, other people who may show up in the news, and to think about what's driving them and what confusions they might be facing. And if they seem to be acting in good faith, then I think some of the empathy that Diane taught me is something that I can extend to them as well.
Nice.
I'm curious, what was the most challenging aspect or dynamic that you wanted to get, and how do you feel you did on that?
What was the most challenging dynamic you tried to get right?
That's a great question. I think because I ultimately chose to follow these 6 very different characters and to present these 2 different sides of the community, I was very concerned about the balance that each of their perspectives would hold, and that they would each contribute something different, that none of them would become purely representative of quote unquote their group, that somehow we would understand the broader communal dynamics and still hold on to these people as individuals who make their own decisions and who act in ways that are right for them, and that may or may not be aligned with their quote unquote side. And so that balance between the communal and the individual, I think, was both the project of the book and the biggest challenge.
Nice. Yep, in the back.
Hey, so in your book, something that stands out a lot is the concept of hope and what being a good neighbor, being a good human is. And my question to you is, like, why do you think that happens in Griffin specifically, when you have these dynamics all taking place at the same time? And living here, I can see that all that happens here as well. Do you think that's happening all across America? And why do you choose to just like use that concept throughout the entire book?
The question is about like the concept of hope and how it finds itself in Griffin, and the way that it maybe also manifests in Hudson and in our region as well, and whether or not that's the case elsewhere. And I think that gets to why I chose to create a fictional town in an unnamed state, in an undefined time, is to really distill that possibility and to focus in on the relationships. I didn't want these characters to be responding to a particular time, particular election cycle, particular national figures, or a particular hot button issue. That it was an effort to really put a magnifying glass on this community and the possibility of what it offers when we look closer around at our neighbors, as opposed to focusing purely nationally and making decisions based on strategic calculation. And that seemed to offer the possibility of a more positive civic discourse. Fiction, when it responds to political moments, oftentimes takes us to a very dark place. And I think we're all doing a very good job of that on our own when we read the newspapers and we see the headlines. We know how to go there. But I think fiction can also offer the possibility of a better outcome and a better way. And so I think that was my goal in stripping it of all known associations with American toxicity as we know it, but to present a group of people who are learning how to see each other and who are each in their own way making an effort to try and make their family, their community, their town a little better.
Was there anything that happened to you in your real life and you were like, oh, that's so juicy, I have to get this in book? Or like an Easter egg that you implanted just like for yourself to like,
yeah.
Well, there is a moment when two guys named Brian and Steven from the city come up for a visit. So that was a little Easter egg. Yeah, and I think there's a couple moments, I think a couple phrases that either when sitting at a bar or just something I've overheard at a pool party definitely made their way in just as a little, to keep it fun for myself. Yeah, there's definitely like little pieces, snapshots of my life that are peppered throughout.
Yeah, we can do 3 or 4 more. Ron.
Well, I mentioned that you had 6 characters in mind when you set out to write the book. Did you, as you started writing and got through the month of November, did you find that, oh my God, there's a character that I never even thought of I need to interact with these other characters? And did you create any that you didn't anticipate from the start?
I'm trying to remember if all the characters now in the novel were there when I did it that one November. I'm sure that there have been characters that have been added to explore these other dynamics of what it means to be kept out of the community or whatnot. I think one of the biggest changes in terms of the characters that I followed is the fact that after a few drafts, I decided not to follow the candidates in the race. That at one point we were in their head, we were seeing what the experience looked like from them. And at some point I realized that wasn't actually contributing to our understanding of the themes and the dynamics. That it actually wasn't important, their ambition, their policy positions, etc. What I was most interested in is the way that the race affected the people in their lives. And because, of course, it's a political novel because it follows an election, but it's not about politics. And so it ultimately was unimportant what the politicians were doing and thinking. It was more about politics as the water that we all swim in and how that affected the relationships in their lives. And so I dropped them as point of view characters and really decided to focus on their spouses, their children, their friends.
I didn't realize that until you said that. It's right. It could have been very distracting as well. Yeah.
So saying you were trying to not make this regional. So you gave yourself this task as to naming it on a specific culture, time period, etc. But did that falter the process? Because obviously, when you look at previous authors like Grace Michalis with Peyton Place or John Barrett with United Regard Good and Evil, they're very direct in writing to the culture that they're living in, to the communities they're living in, right down to describing very specific buildings. Did that make this process maybe more difficult for you to try and not very blatantly make it kind of
definitely Millerton or Millbrook.
Or Salisbury, Connecticut.
Go back and be like, I'm just gonna make this Millerton.
No, it gave me a lot of freedom, which I appreciated. Also, too, because the turnover in all of these towns is so crazy. So a cafe or a restaurant or a store that I wrote about would not necessarily be here 6 years later after I started. But I think the reason that I did it and why I think it also feeds the themes and the intention of the book is because it's a dynamic that we see everywhere across the country. And there's some markers seasonally mostly that kind of suggest that Griffin is in the Northeast. Friends and early readers who are in California, Florida, Tennessee, the Midwest, they all know a town that is 2 hours outside of a major city that has these exact same dynamics. They see this play out all the time. And one of the things that I wanted to do is, by stripping it of exact geography, is to allow people to imagine whatever town is closest to them, whatever town that they think of when they think of the dynamics of the Duffles.
You can take one more.
Thanks for the discussion here today. Quickly, curious, a two-parter. So just generally, what's your writing routine like? I think we've heard a lot of your process, the nonfiction journalist background of research. What are the habits you built to get this done over the course of 6 years, 5 years-ish? And then what's the iteration on the draft? So you talked about your first draft here, you had a process where you kind of let go of the satirical character analysis. So where do we land? Is this version 100 or where would you say it is?
Steven, my husband, has read every draft. So what number is this? I don't know. A dozen at least.
I'm going to say 12.
Yeah, something like that. I think the process of writing this was like quite an anomaly, and I don't know if I can ever recreate it again because it was driven by the pandemic. Because I basically, for that first year when we were mostly in lockdown, I treated this as my full-time job and would give myself a very disciplined kind of 9 to 6 schedule. After I had this like crazy, messy first draft, then when I decided I was actually going to pursue this, I really took the time to step back, map it out, decide what the story would be, decide the characters that I wanted to explore and develop, and then wrote very seriously for a year. But then it also became a question of getting it published. And so then I started a querying process to get a literary agent. That took me 2 years. And I had, I think, close to 50 either rejections or non-responses. And so I was revising as I got feedback, but that wasn't necessarily a regular process. Once I got an agent, it took another year to sell it. And from feedback that I got from that, I did another draft. And so it was very start and stop. And there were periods of intense revising and intense rethinking, and then periods of sitting back and waiting and thinking that this thing is never going to happen. And then even once I sold it, that was actually like 18 months ago. And then it's another round of edits with an editor, and then it goes in production. So it's a very long gestation period, but worth it. I'm glad to be here today with you all with this.
Are you writing anything now?
I'm starting to work on the next thing, which is still percolating, but will be very different.
Thank you all for being a part of this. He's going to be over there signing books, and Sly Doug's here selling books. Thank you, Hudson Wine Merchants, for helping us with the wine. Thank you to the Spark. And then we are going to do a Cidiot podcast about this. It's most likely going to be called the Duffles, because someone's got to use it on the headline. And thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in to this special episode. I love doing live events. The energy, the people, and I love this new book. Hopefully it encourages more people to not only move to the Hudson Valley, but be a part of the community. And as Brian Shaefer said, show up. I'm Matt Zucker. Come visit.
Down in the valley, moved up from the city. It's a new way of living, and I'm trying to get used to it. 1 part noodles, half an ounce of an idiot. Ordered a Manhattan, and they call me a Cidiot. At first I hurt my feelings, but it's kinda got a ring to it. When you move to the country, they can tell when you're new to it. I'm looking at a place, but I'm trying to keep fitting in. It takes too long to be a local, so for now I'm a Cidiot.